I'm going to start off with our next session here. I'm really excited to introduce my friend and coworker, Jesse Bardo, who's going to be leading our next session on peer-to-peer networking. So you guys, you're on.
Great.
All right. Thank you all for coming. My name is Jesse Bardo, co-founder of EverTrue and director of customer experience. I'm pleased to be following the CMO of the Red Sox and Field Yates with an even more stellar panel here. My friends and EverTrue enthusiasts. Introduce everybody here. So first we've got Brent Grinna on the far left here. That's an inside joke because he always gets confused with Brent at all the other conferences we go to. This is Ben Carcio of PromoBoxx. We've got Parks. Parks is from Longwood University. And then Leah Davis from WBUR. Thank you. So for our panel, we wanted to give you guys a little bit of context about why these three professionals are up talking about peer-to-peer relationships and volunteers and networks. So we're going to have, each of them has a little bit of a segue or a startup for this conversation. So I'm going to let them introduce either a video or images to talk about that, and then we'll get into the panel. So start with Ben and PromoBoxx.
Sure. Hi, I'm Ben Carcio, CEO of PromoBoxx. PromoBoxx is a brand to retail marketing platform. We make it incredibly easy for manufacturing brands to support local independent stores with digital marketing. I think we're going to kick a video off now, but just quickly, I want to warn you, we use this at our conference, and it's got a pretty dramatic soundtrack. I listen to soundtracks on my headset, because if you do, it feels like you're in the movies every day. So I'm just going to warn you, if the music's a little dramatic, that's just me and my personality.
Oh. Awesome. So now we'll have Parks introduce his program and why he's up here talking about alumni volunteer networks.
I'm learning already. Brent said take one thing away from this conference, and I think we need to use the soundtrack from 300.
Yeah, 100%.
Longwood. So
yeah.
I'm Park Smith. I'm the director of Alumni Relations at Longwood University. We're a small public Division I university about an hour southwest of Richmond, Virginia. If you ever heard of Longwood, it's probably because we hosted the vice presidential debate this past year. Mike Pence called us Norwood University, so that was a lot of fun. So 92% of our alumni live in Virginia, so we wanted to find a way that we could engage alumni outside of geographic parameters, time parameters, things like that. And our alumni are our best marketers. They are our best storytellers, excuse me. So we created our 1 hour a month program, which is a volunteer program with different time bundles. organized to let alumni volunteer in different ways, whether they're interested in sports, whether they want to take one of our flags on a Navy destroyer ship like you see here, dress up their kids or their, I know some people call their dogs their kids. So it's a fun program where we also reward our alumni for focusing them on different initiatives that we're looking to achieve. So it's been a lot of fun. We just wrapped up the first year. I'm looking forward to talking about it.
Wonderful. And so last but not least, Leah, I think you are, at least right now, our first returning Raise panelist from last year. And so Leah's going to update us on the work that she's done at WBUR. And we have another video here.
But I'm going to talk about it first.
Right.
Can we pause it? Okay. So I'm Leah Davis. I'm the Associate Director of Membership and New Media at WBUR. How many of you listen to WBUR? Or how about we'll just say NPR, not just WBUR, NPR. Okay, good. So you're all aware about how we fundraise, right? You're familiar with our model of taking you all hostage whenever we want money? Okay. So that's the state of public radio right now. Our fundraisers basically focus on making content that is usually free, a little bit harder to access until people pony up and support the stuff that we need them to support. We're aware that this is not going to last forever. With people getting access to streaming and to podcasts, people can just turn away from us during fundraisers. So we are in a very, very intense race to try and figure out how to shorten fundraising days and still not lose out on the money that we need to keep going. With that in mind, we're doing something called the WBUR Marathon, which is modeled on higher ed giving days. So this is something where we're looking to you guys for expertise. And we've been trying to figure it out in the public radio space. My point of today's talk is that we were able to take a whole bunch of people who don't care about fundraising even a little bit and get them to raise us $1.2 million in a day. So here's our video.
Hi, this is John Davidow. I'm the digital director here at WBUR. Welcome to our marathon fundraiser. 26.2 hours, not miles of fundraising. We're hoping to raise $1.2 million. And we're going to just give you a bit of a tour inside WBUR, see some of the members of the digital team and other members of the team. Asma Khalid just ducking by as she's getting ready to go on the air. And we're all just hoping that you'll join in and donate to WBUR. So let's start with a bit of a tour. If you just sort of pan the camera. I'm being ably assisted with Liz Gillis, who's been the mastermind of all of this. This whole area, as you point and shoot, is digital, editorial, and wait, as we continue our pan, we get all the way over to Tiffany Campbell, executive editor of digital, and over here, Hitesh. Hitesh is behind Radio Boston. Hitesh, have you ever run a marathon?
I have not. Metaphorically, yes, but never a real one.
Nobody on that video was a fundraiser, in case you couldn't tell. Okay. One. Two, they're all wearing those really sweet Keep Democracy Running shirts, even all the people in the background, even our producers and editors and techs. And then three, these are people who were using the stuff that they were doing just in their everyday jobs, in their everyday lives, and they were using it to promote fundraising. So keep that stuff in mind when we talk about volunteerism at WBUR.
Absolutely, and I think that this is to Leah's point, getting everybody involved. You guys are no different. A lot of the folks in the audience, as you said, higher ed giving days, or just rallying the whole team around a campaign, whatever it might be. So really excited to dive a little bit more into this. Just to give you guys a little bit of more context around the conversation, the peer-to-peer fundraising movement this is getting bigger and bigger all the time, and the reason that we've really dove into it is mostly because you guys in the audience have asked us to. And it's in the background of myself, of Brent, of most of the folks at the EverTrue team. We all volunteer for our institutions, and it's another area where we have seen there's been a lack of technological innovation, and we want to continue to move that forward as we are, and hence the conversation we're all here today. So I want to just open this up now to the panel. I have a number of questions, and we'll open it up to you all. But how have peer-to-peer networks impacted your work and enabled success? And I'd love to just go down the line, and I'd love you guys to talk a little bit more about some of the things we saw in the beginning of the conversation.
Yeah, so like why is someone from a marketing company here that doesn't do any fundraising, what possibly can we add value to this conversation. But if you put yourself in the shoes of a manufacturing brand, so take GE Appliance. GE Appliance sells the majority of their appliances through independent stores. About 20% goes to Depot and Lowe's, 5% goes to e-commerce. So despite what everyone thinks, it's the brick and mortar independent stores that are selling the majority of their products. So in their world, they're like the fundraisers, or they're like your alumni or people that you need to donate money. And the whole challenge there is they're difficult to mobilize, they're difficult to work with. So our approach is, and this is our number one core value, is you have to believe in the retailer. That although they seem slow and dangerous behind the wheel, they actually do add a lot of value if you give them the right context. So every decision we make, everything that we do as a company, we think what empowers the retailer to then advocate for the brand. Because if you're a GE retailer, it's like being an alumni of the University of Massachusetts like me. It's part of who you are, and you want to let people know that. So I would say that's sort of the context that we bring to the table in terms of what we do, is that is you look at a constituency that is sort of a challenge to mobilize and figure out, go right at that challenge and figure out what drives them, what gets them excited. And I think what works in our world, and I think tying into the WBR thing, is they like campaigns. Like, urgency is a marketer's best friend. So when you do a campaign, it gets people fired up, it has an end date. So that's the same way that we apply our tactics in PromoBoxx. It's not like do digital marketing every day and buy ads on Google and sort of this low hum thing that we do when we sell to SMBs. It's, hey, it's Christmas season coming up, Q4 holiday, are you ready? Are you sending campaigns out to your stores, and are they sending them to their customers? So I would say that those two things are really important, is to focus on sort of target the person that's hard to work with and figure out how to make them better to work with. And then campaigns just create urgency, and urgency drives those peer networks. And
can you talk, just because we've gone back a long time that we've known each other, and I think your story has captivated me just like Brent's, and in a different context. But talk a little bit about how you saw this gap and what you guys have done to really engage that gap.
Yeah, I mean, definitely my personal story, a lot like Brent and the pig farm, I think, is Brent's story, or the Iowa farm boy. My parents had sort of a different story. I was raised in a package store. If you know what a package store is in this state, it's a liquor store. So I was very popular in high school and college. Keys to a liquor store. Obviously I didn't have access to free pork products like Brent, I'm sure did. But every day brands would walk into my parents' store and they would say, how can we make you better? How can we make you a better business? And they never asked for anything in return. Obviously, when we went to go buy more of that product from that particular brand, we favored them. So that's what I saw, and I thought that's the way the world worked. And then when I saw the rise of e-commerce and digital, I saw this, that we sort of stopped. That we thought that these stores didn't matter anymore, and that digital was a way to bypass and go directly to the consumer. But as it turns out, these stores are still there, and 95% of all products are sold through physical stores, and that's the gap that I saw. So it was like a personal background story combined with seeing what's happening in the market and just closing that gap. And I think that's philosophically why we believe in the retailer, just like at EverTrue, you guys believe in the power of the network. And we're part of a network. We're Techstars 2011 alumni, and that's why we're here. Yep. Right? And that's why I know you, I know you, and I Brent, I know a bunch of the team, and that network is how Boston tech ecosystem works too. Right. So to throw that.
And we throw alumni events.
Yeah.
Ben usually hosts them.
Can I jump on that?
Yeah.
Because you said something really important about vendors coming to retailers and asking how they can make their life better without asking for anything in return.
Exactly.
And I think that is exactly what we're doing too. So when we started our campaign, we started about 3 months out, and we spent 3 months listening to the people inside our station before we asked them to do anything for us. We didn't even prep them. I mean, they knew there was a campaign coming because there's always a campaign coming, but we embedded our membership team with journalists, with people who are working in the newsroom, and we really got a feel for what it was that they needed and how we could best serve them. The ask came 2 to 3 months later and a month before the campaign.
Great. Parks?
Yeah, so at Longwood, our gift officers would go out into the field and they'd come back and they would say, so-and-so wants to get really involved. How do they get involved? Longwood's been around for 200 years, but I'm the second director of Alumni Relations in the history of the school. I replaced a woman who was there for 40 plus years, so things had gotten a bit stale. And we didn't have a good answer to that, and their answer was, well, we can get you onto the alumni board, and we can't have an alumni board with 50 people on it. So we needed something else for folks to do, so we created this 1 hour a month program. We thought it would help identify our highest affinity alumni and create a group that we could focus on different things pending their interests at different parts of the year. Thought we'd get about 200 people. After year one, which just wrapped up July 1, we have 650 people. They submitted over 1,200 hours of volunteerism on behalf of the university in year one. And the beautiful thing about this and some of the success stories are we now have a volunteer army. So if we know we need something, we know the people to go to for it. So for example, in March, we were having admitted student events in Richmond, Norfolk, and the DC area, which are our 3 biggest areas of population. So who better to talk to admitted students or write letters to admitted students than our alumni? And the alumni love talking to students, whether they're high school students or current students. And that was a huge success. Another focus in February was our Giving Day, which is called Love Your Longwood Day. I didn't name it, I promise. So we've had some marketing challenges with that. So after year one, our advancement department set a really aggressive goal of getting 1,839 donors, which is the year that Longwood started. 1/4 of our donors were 1 hour a month members, and we had kind of kickoff parties and things of that nature and marketed them saying, hey, you don't have to donate. We would love every dollar counts, but just make the day viral, and they really helped us. We can't measure how much of the success was from them promoting the day, but I mean, I think the fact alone that 1/4 of the donations on Giving Day came from 1 hour a month members is pretty meaningful. So.
Yeah, gotta watch that hashtag.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, Leah, would you just, we talked a little bit about it, but I also think, and Parks, you guys have both sort of mentioned this, but and I guess I'll pull the room here. How many of you have a volunteer network at your institution? Okay, so about half, if not a little bit more. How do you, and Leah, you've already mentioned a little bit, but how did you start? You got the idea, somebody had the idea about how you're going to do this the second year, and then you started to embed your membership team. But like, talk a little bit about like the idea to actually the fruition and then how that really helped. And what we didn't show was the marathon, what do you call it? The step.
The treadmill
Treadmill,
cam?
sorry, treadmill cam.
Oh, we can get to the treadmill cam.
Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, let me clarify that WBUR has a huge volunteer network that are properly volunteers, people that aren't affiliated necessarily as employees of the station. But what I'm talking about today is really the people who volunteered to fundraise for us within the organization. And the reason that I'm doing this is because your donors will not love you unless your employees love you first. So people who are in your institution need to be your biggest cheerleaders, even if they're not in development, even if they're not in membership, even if they don't care about fundraising. So that's where we started, because maybe 5 years ago, if you went to a reporter or a newscaster in WBUR and said, hey, will you fundraise for us? They would probably, say no. They would say no, or that's not my job, or I'm really busy, just tell me what to say and I'll do it, and then they'd repeat some stuff on air, and that's cool, but it's not what we wanted. So when we talk about taking fundraising off of the air and putting it on digital, we know that it has to be a really authentic ask, which means that we really needed people to care about fundraising at the station. So we started treating our internal staff like our first set of donors. We made them feel like the most special people on earth. We listened to what it was they needed. At the time, this was around the election, a few months before the event, we had an idea about what the event was going to look like. Last year it was called the WBUR Marathon. We focused heavily on Team WBUR, so it was a little bit campy, a little bit fun, definitely about coming together as a big team, very sportsmanlike. And this year we were all set to do the same thing, just a little bit better, a little bit more refined, when we started listening to our station. So we went out into the newsroom, and what we found was that there was a lot of uncertainty in the room, which was reflecting what the community was feeling. People really, really wanted to stand behind something important. They wanted to make a difference, but they really weren't sure what to do next. So we saw that opportunity to show them a way forward. And we rebranded our campaign, revised our hypothesis, and came up with, we moved away from Team WBUR, although we still focused on that hashtag, but we came up with Keep Democracy Running. So it's got a very mild running theme, but it was something people could stand behind in the newsroom and also on the membership team. So our journalists got really excited about this. They all wanted the shirts, they all wanted to know what was going on, and we started putting together the tools to tell them about it. So we courted them. These boxes would show up on people's desks, depending on whose help we needed when. It was a very targeted rollout. We started with people we thought were going to help us the most, who weren't necessarily the sexiest people in the room, so not necessarily hosts, but people who had a lot of connections. Then we would roll up to hosts and editors and people who managed social. And each box was customized for the person from the various bits and pieces that we had. So imagine a buffet of marketing tools that we could mix and match for the individual. Shirts, letters, these pretty sweet shoelaces. And the shoelaces are getting back to one of the ways that we got people involved in the day. So on the day of the event, we decided it would be a really great idea to keep a treadmill running for 26.2 hours. That we would just do it the whole time, and we'd put it on video, and we were going to somehow make this make a lot of money for us. That was the seed of the idea. But really, what the idea was that we wanted people to be involved, and we needed to give them another way to be involved that wasn't necessarily going out and asking everyone they knew for money. We didn't need everyone to raise $100,000, but we did need everyone to get people to the site. So this was our bid to get folks to talk about the fundraiser without having to feel gross around fundraising. So do you guys want to see what the marathon treadmill looked like? Okay, hit play.
Hi viewers. Yeah, I've been here since 12:30. I'm only moderately schwitzing.
Your day here at WBUR.
I started here at 4 a.m. as an associate producer on Morning Edition. It was dark.
How many hours is that?
A lot. I mean, I'm here for writing, not math, so.
This is Sarah Rose. We chose her specifically for her accent.
Yeah, get it on the radio.
I'm gonna turn it down when we make the move so you don't injure yourself.
When do you want to make this move? Okay, swap it off. All right, we're about to do a pass off. The digital squad is taking over, but Sarah Rose is going to talk to us, so stay tuned.
I'm nervous.
All right, look at that, 26.2 hours. There's just no breaks. No breaks for WBUR, Team WBUR.
So we only had one person fall off in the whole 26.2 hours. We did keep it going the entire time. But the thing that was really exciting about this for me personally was at the beginning of the day, at 9 a.m., we had about 8 people signed up. And as soon as people saw their friends and their coworkers getting on that thing and decided that they were actually having fun and that it wasn't just a weird gimmick, people were fighting for spots. So we had over 200 people sign up over the course of the day. People were taking 5-minute shifts. Whole departments would come in and do high fives every 2 minutes to jump on and off. We had a group of 8 people volunteer to spend the night. It was a really great thing for team building, and it let people talk about this fundraiser again without having to necessarily make that ask.
Can I just point one thing about this that's great is it's real.
Oh
right?
my God.
It's not, and I'm sure you realize it's not like sort of polished and executed perfectly, but I think that is what makes it endearing. And I think how we apply that to our business is that, and we have this tool that allows us to see all the crazy logos that the dealers are uploading into our platform, and the logos are comical. It's like Carpet World, and there's a castle and a dragon. I mean, arguably you would say like, let's get these guys better logos, but in reality, that's who they are, right? And embrace that, embrace the weird, and you see that in some places. If you've ever been to Portland, Oregon, they have a Keep Portland Weird campaign, which is really about keeping the stores independent and funky and not well executed. So I think what makes your campaign great, A, it's easy, it's less expensive, easier. I mean, anybody could just get a Facebook Live cam going. It's easier, and it probably doesn't cost as much as something that's well polished. So I think the point here is like, dive in, be real, be who you are. And I would say that same thing would apply because it feels more authentic, and people love authenticity, especially the newer generations coming up.
And you know what? That video is a side effect of what we're talking about here. We didn't tell the digital team to make this video. It's 17 minutes long. There's 3,000 views. Like, wow.
I watched all 17 minutes.
Did
It's
you?
riveting.
It was kind of lovely, right?
Yeah.
But we did give them the tools, and we explained exactly what it was we were doing. We explained how they specifically could help with their expertise, and then we said, whatever you want to do, we are here to support you. And they said, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we did this video? And we said, absolutely. What can we do? Have some shoelaces.
And so now all of you guys go back, get your English department to get on a treadmill, and I think that's where we start our next campaigns. I think that's the right way to do it. So I think, first of all, these are all these ideas and sort of Parks, what you guys have done. All of it comes from a great ideas and coming of a team, and then Leah, you making that impact and making that happen. How do you do this in a scalable way? Parks, are you just managing how do you know all those volunteers? What are you guys doing today to enable this program to keep going? And I would ask the same thing for Ben. How do you guys manage, or how do your brands manage all of these intimate small players?
Yes, so we learned a lot in year one. There's no doubt about that. We did a little month pilot program with about 80 alumni that we felt confident who would participate in the program. Learned a little bit there, but it's been learning on the fly. I do the program with a student worker and a GA the past year, so it didn't take a huge team. We figured out the marketing cadence, so maybe an email at the beginning of the month saying, hey, here are some new initiatives for this month that will help us out and are also fun for you. Middle of the way, kind of reminder of what's going on that month, what your next reward is, and then at the end of the month, hey, it's time to log your 1 hour. So that's on autopilot for the most part. We're using Airtables, which adds a ton of transparency to our department all the way around. It's a great tool. And then at the end of the month, we get the team together, grab some pizzas or something like that, and kind of assembly line rewards. So the biggest piece of advice I would have is the old saying, like, keep it simple, stupid. The first year we were like, let's gamify this, let's have leaderboards, let's have point systems, and I'd still like to do that, but when you're doing it yourself and you don't have that automated technology to do something like that, it becomes cumbersome. So this year we're just tracking months, and you get a reward every like 2 to 3 months depending on how you're participating. So more focused on conversion rate instead of growth. So getting people to participate every single month and do those unique initiatives where we need help, or admissions needs help, or fundraising needs help. So our conversion rate right now is about 62% of the people who sign up actually do something. So that's our biggest goal for this fiscal year.
And just because you touched on it, and I think this is a critical piece to this, you're essentially, you're hurting a lot of cats, both internally and externally, because you want to continue the program. How do you reward both internal stakeholders and those folks who are boots on the ground, taking those pictures and doing that? What are those rewards that you have?
Yeah, so I think internally it's pretty, our return on engagement is pretty simple to prove. The Giving Day example, admissions, when they say, hey, can we get 100 alumni to write letters to admitted students? I'm like, yeah, here's a list for you. Here's our most engaged alumni. So they see the value there, and they see us as a campus partner that was never really there before. And it's great to just talk ideas and things of that nature. We have a big speech pathology program, and they wanted to get involved. Athletics has been a great partner in this, whether they're trying to get someone back for a big basketball game or something like that. We don't want to blend metrics, so if you come to like a happy hour or something like that, you don't get credit for that. But if you come to the happy hour and share that you're going to the happy hour, take pictures of the happy hour, things like that, that's what you get credit for. The way we're rewarding our alumni, like I said, last year we did point system. This year we're doing months. We have rewards, t-shirts, hats, mobile chargers, VIP experiences for people who hit certain thresholds. We also have rewards. We had hot streak hoodies this year. So if you did three months in a row, we're sending you a hoodie. And that helps the marketing too. So we can segment our marketing and say, hey Bob, you're 1 month away from earning your hat. Scarves are big at Longwood, like soccer scarves. So that's been a big hit as well. So it's been nice, and one of our marketing goal was we're tired of seeing Virginia Tech and James Madison and UVA t-shirts all over the place. So we want to get as much Longwood gear out there to folks as well. So
Great, thanks.
Yes, in terms of the PromoBoxx world, and what pops in mind is a brand we work with called the North Face. I'm sure you guys have seen the North Face. It's a huge brand. In their world, they don't have unlimited. It's a big brand, but they can't work with every store. So what they end up doing prior to PromoBoxx is they focused on the bigger stores. So they focus on Dick's Sporting Goods or Sports Authority or these bigger players, because from an ROI perspective, they could assign individuals to call on those stores or those group of stores, and there was an ROI. When it came to an independent store, the ROI wasn't there. You can't send people, you can't travel people out to see an individual store, in Aspen, Colorado. But what happens is those individual stores, although from a dealer volume perspective might be smaller, they're highly influential. Right? So the new entry brands like Arc'teryx and Patagonia, they were going after those stores because they knew they were the tastemakers. So without software, i.e. PromoBoxx, they couldn't serve those seemingly smaller brand, stores. So I would imagine that would apply to why there's value to EverTrue. Sorry, this is going to be a sales pitch for EverTrue. Why there's value for EverTrue is that you can actually start to organize people and not necessarily, and from a software perspective, a lot of what you were mentioning, getting that to scale. So our value proposition that we say to a brand is treat every store the same that you would treat bigger stores. There's actually a law that requires a manufacturing brand to do that. But oftentimes they don't because they focus on those larger accounts, and that puts them at risk. Because I would imagine in your world, even though I'm an alumni of University of Massachusetts, wherever the development guy is, I don't donate a lot, but I could be, I would throw a couple $100 here or there. I know I'm gonna sprint out the door. I can be influential. I think I'm a pretty good story, right? So I think that I can help entrepreneurship and things like that. So the point I'm trying to make is that software allows you to uncover what is seemingly, from a rank order ROI perspective, a group of people that are very, very valuable. They just haven't been given the context and the love, if you will, that some of the bigger folks get.
Yeah, and I would say Longwood's a little different, where Alumni Relations is separate from advancement, but when I contact people, they immediately assume I'm trying to get your money.
Yeah.
We'd love your money as well. But it's been great to listen. Yeah, exactly. It's been great to listen to people, and like I said, they're your best storytellers. We have a podcast called Day After Graduation Podcast, and we had 10 episodes this past year, and we're telling stories from the past 5 years out of college, but we probably ended up with 20 people participating in that, but we interviewed 80 to 90 people, and they were just so psyched to hear back from Longwood and participate and tell their story. And it's more about listening than it is telling. So yeah, it's been great.
Awesome. And so with Leah, for you guys, this is year 2. You've got now you've engaged not only I think you've gotten your listeners to get excited about the marathon day fundraising. Now you have the internal staff. What's next? How does this continue to grow for you all at WBUR?
So we've got this pretty great Google spreadsheet.
Should use Airtables.
Airtables, okay, good. I made a note, actually, a mental note to check that out a little bit more. So when we're talking about internal volunteerism, it's not scalable for us. We've got 250 people. We know that it's not likely to grow internally. We're not going to get a crap ton more staff all of a sudden.
Right.
So we've got our spreadsheets. I know who's engaged with us last year, who engaged with us this year. I know who to go back to first to get things rolling next year, but that's about where we are.
Okay, great. Well, hopefully we can help you next year.
Please.
Wonderful. And so I also I know this session goes till 10:15, and I want to save time for folks' questions. But for those of you guys have all started these networks and in different ways. What advice for those folks who maybe have a volunteer network now, or who are thinking about starting one? And again, we would see from a EverTrue data perspective, and our marketing team did a great great infographic, I think last week or a couple weeks ago, around volunteering and just how impactful it can be for a university from the perspective of fundraising. So check that out on the blog. But what would you say? What are the keys to starting and getting this going, and then maintaining that? And I think we've talked a little bit about some of the themes, but bringing that all together. What would you say? What have you guys learned about, again, just getting this out the door? And then from there, what are the couple of things that you would say, oh, well, you got to keep doing this, or hey, we learned the hard way not to do that?
Yeah, I would say it's grassroots at the beginning. You can send out an email to your full alumni base, and you're going to get those people who will walk over glass and fire for you. But that's a small amount of people. So you have to get on the phone. You have to find different ways to message them. That's not email, whether that's LinkedIn, whether it's using a digital platform, anything like that, and make it very personal and listen to them and explain the program and what it is and why we'd really like you to get involved. And the biggest thing to remember is they're not going to hear about the program because of your email or your magazine or social media or whatever it is. I'll hear all the time at events, oh yeah, I've seen a picture of that. And the people who hear about it is they're hearing about it from other volunteers. So there's that viralness of it. So encouraging people to refer their friends and get other people involved would be the, and maybe putting a carrot there for them would be the biggest piece of advice I would have. Yeah,
and just following on what Ben was talking about, do you have, there's always at every institution the loudest alums, the ones who come, that come to everything, and those are the natural, we'll get them to be the volunteers. Have you learned anything, or did you guys go out and seek a demographic that maybe you didn't think you had to go and say, oh, well, we really need those younger alums, or maybe it's older alums to be engaged with this because they're going to be different hubs for us, that we're going to get folks that we weren't going to get necessarily?
Yeah, so at Longwood, Alumni Engagement before we got there was you graduated and you didn't have a reunion until your 40th year. So wasn't a great model. So we tried to bridge that gap, and the young alums were easy to get. You say free beer and they come out, and it's great. So the gaps that we were missing are we were a female-only school until 1976. So the Longwood ladies, as we call them, they're high affinity. They'll still come to everything. So it was the folks who were 80s and 90s who were Longwood College, and they still get pretty angry that we're a university now. Those were the folks we were missing. So those are the folks that we tried to reconnect with and find a way to get over hurdles, whether they have kids, they don't live close to areas and things like that. So really segmented our marketing to get to those folks and tell their friends about it, and try to create a viral campaign that way.
Great.
So you said two things that I think are super important, and the first is listen. So listen, listen, listen. Don't just listen and then talk, but listen and then think about what your message needs to be. And then the other is make things go viral. And I think that the way that you do that is you show people what they need to do. You don't just tell them to do it. So put the tools in their hands, give them the actual tweets. I mean, literally, send them 3 or 4 different options that say this thing, please. Or say whatever you want, but you could also just say this thing, because people don't want to think too hard about it, even though they really want to support you. And they want to make sure they're doing it right, so show them the way forward.
And I would say we put a sweatshirt, a hat, or whatever in a branded box like this that says 1 hour a month, and it gives you those instructions like, hey, share this on Instagram or wherever, and instantly their friends are like, hey, how'd you get that sweatshirt for free? So it's huge.
Totally. This postcard was our biggest thing. We print a couple thousand of these, and they just go everywhere, in-person events to one-on-one meets, just everywhere, and they say, literally 1, 2, 3, here's what you do. You take a picture with this postcard, you hashtag Team WBUR, and then on April 5th, you make a donation.
And Ben, do you guys do the same thing from a PromoBoxx perspective in terms of getting these brands to get the word out? Do you give them how much is that instruction important?
Well, yeah, I always say, and it's funny, I think hearing concepts and stories and how you deploy and using a Facebook Live, I think we spend so much time as business people and marketers focusing on form and function. Like what is the form of it? Is it going to be beautiful? What is the function? What is the software? And as a software person, as a person who sells software, I always say to people, I'm a doctor, not a miracle worker, which is a quote from Star Trek. Like, we can only do so much as software people. It's actually the idea that matters. And there's nothing stopping you from deploying idea. Like, you could hashtag, and I'm sure you have, the love my Longwood. Probably shouldn't put a pause in there. And that would like outstretch every form and function thing that you've ever done, just that simple hashtag. So the power of an idea is so important that you get the idea out. And the quick way that we educate our brands on how to have an idea is you treat your retailers like pillars of their community, people who sponsor Little League Baseball, who are there protecting the community and watching for it. Treat them like pillars of their community, and everything else dovetails from there. So we sell software just like EverTrue, but you also need to sell the whole idea of what you're trying to do. So I think form function is great, but idea is way more important.
Yeah.
So start now with an idea, and then form and function will follow because it makes sense. It creates an evolutionary.
And following that, which I think, and again, I wouldn't search for that hashtag right now or put it in your tweets, but following on that, would you, how do you guys, it sounds like, because I think what a lot of the apprehension around volunteer networks is it's a lot of herding cats, it's a lot of, you have to be very, very personal. But it seems like you guys have overcome that personal aspect of it with the idea and the vision for it, as well as the instruction of how to do it, and then you can do a kind of one-to-many. Is that kind of how you've gotten around that, or is it a combination of all of that? Because I think of my experience at Andover and Wesleyan, it feels like as a volunteer, what's nice about being a volunteer is that the messages seem to be directed right towards me, and it's an individual ask. But you guys have. It seems like that's tell me how you kind of combat that, or how do you do all the work that you do and then make it personal as well?
So at WBUR, we have our tiers of volunteers, right? So we've got, if you're going to imagine it, we've got the membership and development department, and then we've got everyone inside, and then we've got all of their networks, and then all of our volunteers and listeners. So if you're talking about communication, that's the funnel that we're talking about. And as far as I'm concerned, what I'm most interested in is making that message count and articulating it very, very clearly to the tier below me. So as long as everybody at the station is really invested in what we're doing, and I can tell them how to articulate that message forward, their peer groups are basically like versions of themselves. They're invested in the show that is particular to that person. They've got generally the same kind of values as that person. So if I can give that person the tools that they need that feel good to them, that person can then kind of do the same thing, and it's going to hit the right target.
Great.
Yeah, I think sometimes when you launch a volunteer program, you're scared that you end up wasting all your energy on a particular boisterous volunteer, I guess I would say, who's kind of going rogue, or like you're catering to everything. The biggest thing that we've done is we treat everyone the same. So we have board of visitor members who participate in 1 hour a month, and we have recent grads who participate in it. And I think that messaging and that authenticity that we're portraying, that we're here for you to have fun, earn some rewards, and help us out along the way has really gone a long way. And I would just say, just work your hardest to stay personal, but also treat everyone the exact same. So it's a little different than the fundraising world when you're going after prospects and things of that nature.
Wonderful. I think that's a great segue to get to some of your questions. And so I'd love to open it up to the floor. Any questions for these guys? Yeah. Just wait 1 second. We got to get the mic so we can, right here, Max.
Betsy Doherty, UMass Boston. So I'm really fascinated about this idea of the 1 hour a month. How good was your data? Were you sending out emails initially? Were you using Facebook? What were your Facebook followers? I mean, like, the idea is great, but our problem is if there's a university Facebook page that has 17,000 followers and an alumni only has 2,000, that's a much smaller database, and then email open rates are much lower. So I'm just curious about where you started with that and what you were even using for subject lines.
Yeah, I would say all of the above in terms of what we're using. We're using social media, email. I would say we probably send out the most emails as the alumni department. The university only sends out emails, happy holidays, or there's a big announcement or something like that. So segmented messaging is key. So think about the audiences that you're talking to. And things like that. Subject lines, I can dive into those pretty deep at any time, and feel free to reach out to me. But one of the biggest things, as we were talking about conversion, is saying, hey, this is what's coming next, and keeping that carrot in front of people. So that's been a big help. And we have a great database. It's very clean. We're kind of creating a shadow database now with 1 hour a month, and we've had brought on some partners to help us out with that, and it's really been a great process. So.
Other questions? Yeah. Sorry, hold on, wait. Max has to run.
Chris Wells from Notre Dame. Very interesting in how you're using these boxes and different volunteer toolkits. I'm kind of interested in what kind of budget do you have per volunteer, and how are you measuring the ROI, different metrics on that spend per volunteer? Because as you scale upward, you mentioned getting 600, et cetera, volunteers. What kind of investment is there, and how are you measuring success?
So specifically around these boxes? Yes. Okay. We count it a little bit differently, actually. So instead of budgeting per volunteer, we budget per item because we use these items in a lot of different places. So if we know that we're doing shirts for this campaign, the shirt budget is part of our premium budget. I could break it down for you and get back to you. But basically what we do is we take about 5 to 10% of each item that we're already using for marketing campaigns around a fundraiser, and siphon that off specifically for pre-marketing around volunteerism.
And how about Parks?
Yeah, we spent around $12,000 this past year, I would say, on gear, boxes, tie-back, like branded tie-back envelopes, and mailing. Trying to tighten that up and seeing where we can have efficiencies there. The ROI is very anecdotal at this point, besides the volunteer hours that we're getting, the conversion rate going up. So the biggest thing I'm doing right now, and I'm super excited because yesterday I got our new donor file for the FY17. So trying to correlate if someone was a first-time donor or raised a gift, the numbers are small enough for us in terms of individuals. Was there some catalyst for that? Was it them joining 1 hour a month and a month later they gave? It's obviously not a perfect one-to-one ratio every time, but trying to find those correlations in the return on engagement that we're having from 1 hour a month and some of our other programs.
And for us, with the volunteer boxes specifically internally, we ask people to do one of 3 things: tweet, make a gift, etc. And if they don't do those things, they don't get a box next year.
Just the carrot and the stick, right?
Yeah.
That's it.
Great question. Additional questions? We have time for maybe 1 minute, one or two more. Or we can give you back a minute. All right, well, we'll wrap it up with that. I want to first and foremost thank these guys, but I also wanted to, this presentation, some of you guys may have seen it, but we'll be talking a lot more about what we'll be doing for volunteers and what we are doing for volunteers tomorrow, and that Brent's going to highlight that in his keynote, and then my colleague Mike Palladino will be doing a whole session on it, so check your schedule for that tomorrow. But want to thank you guys so much for being up here. Really appreciate it, and very excited for you guys for the next rest of the conference. So thank you.